Good evening. I now call to order the Tuesday, February 13th meeting of the Sugar Land Planning and Zoning Commission. Welcome, commissioners. Looking forward to our meeting this evening. Before we begin, we have all heard about that the city suffered a tragic loss this week. Joseph Aponte was a fleet inventory and part clerk in the fleet division of our Public Works Department. And he was tragically killed in the line of duty on Wednesday, February 7th. And so I'd like to start the meeting this evening by asking you all to join me in honoring Mr. Aponte with a brief moment of silence. Thank you. We'll move on with our agenda and start with item 2, public comment. Do we have anyone signed up this evening?
No, we do not have anyone signed up.
No signups. Is there anyone wishing to address the commission this evening? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to item 3, consideration of and action on the minutes of the January 9th, 2024 meeting. Members, you have the minutes in your packet. Are there any changes or alterations you'd like to see?
Motion to approve.
I have a motion from Commissioner Brown. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Parikh, and we'll all vote at this time. Thank you. So now we'll move on to item 4, review of and discussion on proposed development code amendments. Laura, it's your show tonight. Take it away.
Good evening, everyone. So we are here to talk a lot about the land use matrix. So I guess I can give you just a little bit of background on exactly what the land use matrix is. So during orientation in January, Lauren mentioned that we would be coming forward with some development code updates throughout the year and over the next couple of years. This is in order to just kind of breathe new life into the code and just get it to that living document status that it needs to be. This evening, we are prioritizing the land use matrix. That is because council has directed us to remove smoking, tobacco, and vape shops from the development code in alignment with a similar code of ordinances amendment that would prohibit public smoking and smoking in public places. So we are taking advantage of that moment while we take out that use from the land use matrix, we're also doing some other needed land use matrix amendments and changes. This is to strengthen and to modernize the code, as well as to support the top priority of council. So that top priority is redevelopment, specifically reuse of existing sites, redeveloping aging sites, and also to retain businesses that have been here for a while, make sure they're staying here, and then attract some new target industries that our economic development group is targeting. And again, like I mentioned, this is just amendment number 1, phase 1. We do have quite a few phases outlined, 4 or 5 maybe over the next 2 years or so. So this will not be the first time you hear from me. So to start with, in the residential land use matrix. So the land use matrix outlines.
Hey, Laura, can I just jump in real
Yes.
quick? Can you give us a rundown of where we're going tonight, just
Yes.
overall, and so
Okay.
before we jump right in?
Yes, so the land use matrix for residential zoning districts and non-residential zoning districts. So this is going to be the individual land uses, such as you can put a ranch here, you can put a single family house here, you could put a child care daycare facility. Those individual land uses are line items in a large chart. And then in that chart, it will say P for permitted, C for conditional, meaning it requires a conditional use permit, or it'll be blank. If it's blank, it means that use is not allowed in that zoning district. So in our code, they are broken down into, again, residential and non-residential. And non-residential has some categories such as office, service, retail, industrial, vehicle related. So we're going to go first through the residential chart. It's actually just this one slide. We're not touching much there. And then we'll go by the categories in that non-residential chart to go through all of the changes that are being proposed. And y'all can ask any questions at any point. Feel free to ask questions. We are also altering quite a lot of notes that are associated with each of these. So in addition to the the use, there might be a note with that use. For instance, the first line item on the residential chart is actually agriculture ranching, and that is permitted in our R1E and R1 zoning districts with a note that you have to have at least 5 acres of property to be able to start that use. So then the notes continue from there all the way down throughout that table as one is appropriate.
And Laura, what would be if there are questions, should we wait until the end of a section, or should we?
You can just wait, just go ahead and, I guess, maybe raise your hand, or, and we can go from there. Because the uses are sometimes so different that it would be better to just answer the question right there.
So we'll jump in an orderly way. So, okay, sounds good, thanks.
No problem. So starting off with that residential land use chart. So the first pretty minor change was just to correct the title of residential sales and construction office. It's titled there, and there's also a note associated with it, but they were 2 different titles, so we just made them match. The second change is that we did go ahead and permit independent senior living, which is the 55 and up land use, in the R4 district with some standardized CUP conditions. So before, this was allowed with a conditional use permit. However, we are allowing it by right with those conditional use permit conditions that we've seen in the past standardized as a note at the bottom of the chart. So rather than having to go through the several month process, come to you guys, go to city council, instead those same conditions are just standardized in the chart. You have to do it. It is front loaded in that chart instead of negotiating that through the longer zoning process. Also, one of the notes at the bottom of the chart that applies to all residential districts is called home occupations. That allows people to work from their home in a small capacity. So those are going to be, I believe it's note number 3 at the bottom of the chart, where it allows for you to work from your home so long as you follow these 11 regulations. We have stricken 2 of those requirements. The requirement would be that it is all inside your primary structure. That is because we found a lot of people, who had things like she sheds they wanted to craft in their backyard. They wanted to be able to sell those items on the internet. But with the requirement that your business be conducted in your house, it meant you could not sell anything from that craft shed on the internet because that's considered your home occupation. So we did go ahead and take out the requirement that it has to be inside your home, so it can be in your garage or in that small accessory structure, but all of the other regulations still apply. So that's going to be the 300 square foot maximum, you cannot impact traffic, no noise, no signage, it cannot alter the home to make it not a home. All of those regulations still apply. This is simply allowing you to conduct your occupation in an accessory structure if you have one.
Question.
Yes.
Does this new ordinance supersede HOA rules, or does it have to align with HOA rules?
They actually don't technically interact with, while the resident would have to comply with both HOA and the city's regulations do not necessarily have to match the HOA regulations. Whichever one is more strict is what they would have to follow.
Perfect, thank you.
Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
So you're indicating that, you're allowing now if it's a separate building, like in your yard, but then how does this work when it says it does not use outdoor storage? So could a she shed be considered outdoor storage?
So a shed, outdoor storage is whenever there is storage outside of a structure. So a shed is considered a structure. It's not outdoors, it is inside the shed.
Okay. I just didn't know if somebody could argue that, that they see something like that in somebody's backyard and say, well.
So outdoor storage is, I believe it's a defined term in Chapter 10, and it is it is storage that is outside of a structure. It is not, so because a she shed type thing, it's considered an accessory structure. If it is inside the accessory structure, it is not outdoors. It is inside the structure.
Okay. Understand.
Mm-hmm.
I had a question on the parking congestion. What's the letter of the law there in terms of what the technical limit there is, or is it more, is there a technical limit on what parking is allowed or not allowed?
So that is enforced by our code enforcement group. I'm not sure if, I don't think there's an exact number. I think it's more about the volume of people that might be coming and going. Typically there should be pretty minimal traffic because you're not allowed to have outside employees. If you're running your business from your house, you should be the only employee there in the house.
What about persons that want to run a automotive repair out of their house or garage and then doing the work on the driveway?
So that would be considered outdoors. They would have to do it
Be
inside
outside
the garage.
building. So it'd be outside the building. So
Yes, sir.
now it will be allowed inside the garage, but can't bring it out on the driveway
Correct. And it would have a maximum of 300 square feet
for the
the
garage.
home occupation. So any profit that they're making, that they're doing someone else's work on someone else's vehicle
Mhm.
for money would be limited to 300 square feet.
Well, most garages are 400 square feet.
So they could take up 3/4 of that garage.
Okay.
Okay, so moving on to non-residential. So the first category where there were changes proposed is the retail section of land uses. So something that we did to help with clarity of the code was we created 3 different retail sales categories. These are small, medium, and large, with a 6,000 square foot cap for small, 25,000 square foot cap for medium, and then large is greater than 25,000 square feet. This retail sales combines the previous uses that were all broken out that you see listed up there. So furniture and home furnishings, the several different grocery options, home improvement, both small and large, household appliances, pharmacy, retail, small and large. All of that was combined into this retail sales, small, medium, large. And then, so that to align with what the existing uses were, we did only allow for the small size in our business office and restricted industrial. That would still allow for kind of the convenience store size model. And then we did place a cap of 15,000 square feet in the business, neighborhood business for the medium size. So rather than going all the way up to 25, we did think that it was appropriate to place that cap at 15 in the B1 area, simply for scale and intensity of use near to neighborhoods. Similarly, we did cap liquor and thrift stores. So previously, a lot of our stores had a lot of the land use options had a conditional use permit if you wanted to be greater than a certain size. In this case, for liquor and thrift stores, that was for 5,000 square feet in the B1 area. You could get a CUP to go through that. Staff thought that rather than go through that process, we just cap it, just make it flat, very clear that this is not something that's desired in these areas, larger businesses, because of the more intense uses. So we went ahead and just put a flat cap on it rather than attempting to try and negotiate something later down the road. We also...
And that cap is non-negotiable. There's no CUP beyond that.
Correct. That is the cap. That is the hard and fast rule. If you want to open a larger store, you need to go to a different zoning district. For drive-throughs, so similar to the size caps, depending on where your drive-through was, you might have had to go through a conditional use permit process. This is going to be areas in our BO, business office district, as well as properties within 200 feet of a residential zoning district. Rather than allow that, we thought, why don't we standardize the conditions we've seen on previous CUPs, and then just not allow them within 200 feet of residential. So that's what we went ahead and did. Standardize those conditions, including fencing, extra landscaping and screening, and then required that 200-foot separation from the drive-through to the residential property line. And then in alignment with the city council direction, we did remove tobacco, hookah, and vapor retail store as a permitted use, and we just altered that definition to make sure it matches with the code of ordinances and it's not allowed citywide.
In the event that you have a location that perhaps was a drive-through before and it's empty now, are those grandfathered in, or if a new use comes in there, it is what it is with the drive-through?
So we actually went through and measured all of the drive-throughs that were nearby to residential property, and none of them are within 200 feet per the.
There's one behind my neighborhood that I guarantee you is within 200
So
feet.
the drive-through only property itself, though, how you measure it from the edge of the drive-through line is not within 200 feet of an actual single-family residential property line.
Okay.
There were some that were pretty close,
Okay.
but we did go, and So similar to what we've done with the tobacco, hookah, and vapor retail stores that are existing, they are considered legal non-conforming moving forward, and they can continue to exist in allowance with our legal non-conforming section of the code, which means that they can continue to operate so long as there is not more than 6 months of non-operation. After 6 months, you lose your grandfathering. But we did have to go through some special notification and other things for that. Yes. Put on your microphone. I believe the number was 18. There were 18 business and property owners that, so I guess 18 businesses and the additional 18 property owners got the notice that your business is going to be legal non-conforming after this item passes. Yes.
So on the bar item where you've made the changes, what was the thinking of not putting in for each of the land uses, whether it was permitted or whether it was conditional, and then making that verbiage a note?
What bar item?
It's on page 24. It's for the bar. It's just
Oh, for the bar. So
under retail, yeah.
yeah. So where it says bar there, while it shows that it's redlined, that was actually the definition as altered in the alcoholic beverage overlay district that came through last April. The document where I took this from, it hadn't quite been updated yet, so I just changed that to match. Technically, the text you see that's underlined and that's struck through, that change already went into effect with ordinance, I believe it was 2304.
Yeah, but I would think for consistency, wouldn't you want to keep it?
So a bar is not permitted in any standard zoning district. That's
Okay.
why it's that paragraph there.
Okay, so then that would lead to the next question I have, where you took out everything for the hookah bars and the tobacco. You just left that blank, but you still left it in the document.
Right. So, I understand your question. So for bars, the reason there's that blurb there is because it might be in a specialty district. In this case, maybe the alcohol beverage overlay district or a PD district.
Okay.
Hookah, the tobacco, hookah, and vapor retail store, when it is removed from this code, at the same time, there is, so I guess kind of a preview of next meeting, we are also removing it from 17 different PD ordinances. It will not be allowed anywhere in the city. But we do have to keep it as a separate line item so that it is not lumped into the general definition of retail sales, small, medium, or large.
Okay, because then that's my next question. So how do you prevent, like a grocery store, it's not necessarily just selling that, but it could sell vaping paraphernalia, or they do sell tobacco?
So we talked with our legal department about this actually quite a bit. And so long as it is not strictly a tobacco, hookah, and vapor retail store, it can continue to operate. So like the CVS, gas station, grocery store, all of those can sell that product. If you are a standalone vapor or tobacco or hookah retail store, you cannot open after this goes into effect.
So the same way they'd be grandfathered until they move or whatever, and then couldn't open up. Okay, all right, thanks.
Okay. So moving into services. So there's a several services slide. This is where the majority of our land uses are. We did open up adult daycare in our business office. That is to just assist with support of office uses and just supporting services in that area. Similar to the drive-throughs, we standardized conditions for animal services, boarding, daycare, and outdoor runs. So we had a couple come through in the last year or so. I'm sure y'all remember K9 and the Dogtopia. So we have standardized what those same conditions were as far as the opaque fencing, extra landscape and screenings, and the 200-foot separation from residential. And we put those as standard requirements in the notes of the chart and have allowed them with those notes rather than having to go through the CUP process. Like we did with some of those other uses, we just capped the assembly facility to 10,000. We also standardized CUP conditions for our 4 kind of senior living uses. That's assisted living, independent senior living, nursing and personal care facility, long-term acute care and rehab facility. We've had, I think 8 or 9 ordinances over the last 20 years that we looked at, and we took all those conditions that were placed on each of those, and we have those now in the bottom of the chart. They include a beds per acre concentration maximum, as well as some other required common amenities for each of the facilities. For building and property maintenance services, there was a CUP requirement for that, primarily because council was worried about vehicle storage for uses that were associated with that. So we just added the condition that you cannot have vehicle storage to allow that by right. And then for the permitting the child care facility, we did allow that in business office and B1, but we did cap it at 15,000 square feet. And then the dry cleaning plant, we did remove it as a conditional, it was a conditional use before. We just removed it completely from the chart. We weren't seeing too much demand for that, hardly at all. So we just went ahead and removed it even as a conditional use.
Hey, Laura, real
yes.
quick. On the assembly facility, what's the thinking behind the capping at 10,000?
So that was similar to the liquor store and thrift store, where over 10,000 square feet, it would require a conditional use permit in the B1 area. We thought that 10,000 was probably about as big of a facility that you would want that late, that could potentially be operating late at night next to a single-family residential area. So that's why we
Yeah,
capped.
it's a reflection of the district more so than the use. Okay.
Correct. Mhm. Yes.
I forgot one up in the top, because you removed pharmacy, but was the intent to put that underneath retail? But I didn't see it
Yes.
listed.
So pharmacy is listed under retail.
So it is underneath there? Okay,
Yes,
and the,
pharmacy right here, under retail sales.
I know it's hard to list everything in. When I was reading it.
Oh, you mean in the actual definition in the chart?
Right.
Okay. No, I don't see it in there, but I can go ahead and add that.
Okay.
That was the intention, was to have it
Is that
added there.
back in? Okay. And then the next one, when you were talking about the animal services,
Mhm.
did we like always have this accessory item? Because it seemed like with a few of them, you collapsed them and got rid of the accessory, but in the, for the animal boarding services, and then the, I've got another question around the commercial amusement, indoor, outdoor. But is that too confusing when you have to like go from, rather than put the accessory in with
So the
The
purpose of
boarding.
having the accessory is for the outdoor portion only. So you can have, for instance, a boarding facility similar to the Dogtopia that does not have an outdoor area, that would be permitted by right in a B1 or B2 area. However, if you add in the outdoor run, it was broken out because the outdoor run would have required a conditional use permit. We have now just added the standardized conditional use permit conditions so that you can have them both permitted in the same area. But that outdoor run has special conditions on it that a facility that does not have outdoor areas would not have those screening requirements.
So I only see the conditional use for like the large animals. I don't see down in the accessory where anything is conditional. It's all permitted with a note.
Right, so we took away the conditional use permit, I'm talking about before. So the reason
Oh,
it was
okay.
separate to start with
Okay,
is
okay.
because they had different conditional versus permitted districts and allowances. As of now, they are all permitted in the B1, B2, and M1 areas with the standardized CUP conditions that are in the notes that were taken from previous CUPs.
Now that I understand that, but then it says the limitations, but I don't see anything about fencing when it's outdoor then.
Just looking for the note on that.
Yeah, I had to print some of it because it was too difficult to go back and forth.
I have two documents, so I can have
Yeah.
the chart here and my notes here.
Yeah, this is the red line. It's, I just don't see anything about, there wasn't really anything about fencing in there. It's got stuff about speakers, 200 feet from a residential.
If it's not in there, then it's a mistake, because it's supposed to be in there, so, yeah, it looks like it's not actually listed in there.
Yeah,
It
but
looks
I
like-
would have, it's
yeah.
more for this accessory.
Yes, so there's a missing note. You are correct there, so I will get that added back in there. It would be to provide an 8-foot opaque fence along
Yeah.
the outdoor areas with a double row of shrubs to be 36
Yep.
inches minimum at planting,
Okay.
and to be oriented away from residential lots if there are any. And a minimum of 200 feet separation. Those are
Okay.
the 4 conditions. Apologies for that not being in there. I'll get that fixed. Okay. Moving on. I got that noted. Oh, I clicked the wrong button there. So similar to the dry cleaning, we just don't really see a demand for laundromats. So we did remove that as a conditional use in B1 and B2 and just left it as permitted in our M1 district. There is a new category, a medical, dental, or therapist clinic/office that combines several of the different miscellaneous kind of medical clinic and services. So we have other health services, counseling and therapy, concierge medical care, and our standard clinics that a lot of times we had a hard time differentiating between them, helping applicants understand where they fell, if they were allowed or not. And since they all had very similar permits where they were allowed in the different districts, we went ahead and just kind of combined all of those into one. For commercial amusement indoors, we did allow that in BO to help with some other services in our business office district. And again, we just capped it at 15,000 in the B1 district for that scale and intensity of use near to single-family residential. For amusement outdoors, we went ahead and allowed that by right in B2. So before it was only allowed with a conditional use permit in B2, and because we are trying to get more entertainment, whether it be indoors or outdoors in the city, we opened that up in our B2 area, but we added it as a conditional use permit in B1 because there might be some areas where it could be appropriate, but we wanted to make sure it's compatible with the adjacent uses, especially given that it's outdoors and could be near to single-family residential. Similarly, with emergency room and urgent care in the B1 area, we wanted to make sure that a site that might have a lot of late night activity or noises, make sure that that's separated from residential. So we did put a caveat that be 200 feet away from single-family area. Any questions? I know, Mary, you said something about commercial earlier.
Those were like when you moved them. I guess it's okay for you guys to decide whether to change it from a permitted to a conditional, because I noticed there was a number of those in there. So that's just a change you're making based upon the current.
Market demand and what we're
Yeah.
seeing as far as
Okay.
applications and things like that
Okay.
go. Yes. Okay. So continuing on through our services. So we have permitted indoor fitness instruction in our business office area. It's a pretty big ask that we get a lot, especially for like Pilates studios, dance studios, Taekwondo, and some other indoor fitness instruction. We get a lot of requests for that in our business office area. We also clarified that definition to specifically call out dance, making sure that our dance studios are allowed in that area. We removed large fitness centers, which by the definition are larger than 10,000 square feet. We removed that as an option from B1, just because we, again, didn't think larger intensity buildings were appropriate in that area. And we standardized the conditional use permit conditions that we normally see for outdoor facilities for the fitness center. This is very similar to the outdoor areas for the animal runs, where you have the opaque fencing and 200 feet separation and from the single-family residential property lines. We did permit small fitness centers. This is similar to the indoor fitness instruction in BO, having a small gym to support nearby offices and other industrial uses is, we think, a good thing in our business office area. And then just to clarify, for our funeral home definition, we added crematory in there as part of that definition since it's associated with it. And the same thing with helipad. We just added helipads into the definitions of heliport and hospital rather than having them as separate broken out uses.
Center one. So What was the thinking of you had to have, because you have large and small, and then I sort of read the definition of those, and then you have what you were talking about with the indoor fitness instruction, and those seem to overlap somewhat in the uses of the other two.
They do. That is the way that the chart was initially set up in 2019. Because they don't completely overlap as far as where they're allowed in the different districts, we weren't necessarily comfortable
Changing it.
collapsing them at this point. That might be coming in a future amendment, but because they do tend to have separate uses, so you might see a karate studio or a dance studio or Pilates studio that is separate from a gym. You do see those quite often. So that's why we have fitness instruction broken out as something different. Because there isn't just kind of coming and going, like for instance, I think there's like a Gold's Gym where you can access that 24/7 so long as you have a code to get in the door. Depending on the size of that, that could be small or large. And that is differentiated because of the scale of the building. For instance, we took out large fitness from the B1 area. I don't think we allow large in the business office area either. It's just the small in those two areas.
But then in the accessory for, I don't know, which one is it now? B2, you went from, you permit it now versus a conditional use.
Correct, with the conditions that are similar about the outdoor areas that we've seen on previous conditional use permits. So they have to have screening and separation from single family. But so that outdoor fitness area in B2 would be allowed by right if they met those conditions
Okay.
of the,
And then that's that same note that needs to be
Yes.
added for the fencing then?
yes.
Okay. And before I forget, if you go to retail small, that you have it such that it's supposed to have a note, but it doesn't have, I mean, there's a note, a number, but
Yes.
there's not an N for anything for the small retail.
It applies to all of them. It's for if there's a drive-through associated with the.
But then wouldn't you have an N on each one of the permitted? You do, and that's
Yes,
just,
yes.
I just noticed that when I was.
Okay.
See what I'm talking about? Yeah.
I thought that I had caught all of those. Apparently I missed a few.
Yeah, I just remembered I needed to go back and to my notes here.
I think that's, oh, and so our permanent makeup use, we went ahead and opened that up in BO and M1. We've gotten several requests to move into some of those office condos in those areas. And we altered the definition to more closely align with what we're seeing as far as what permanent makeup is in the area. Any other questions?
About those two, sorry. So I noticed that you got rid of like a print, the local shop, and then you moved that into personal services, but couldn't
Yes.
these all be potentially a retail shop too? So is there gonna be a differentiation, like if they sell things rather than just provide the service? Or if it's mostly service-oriented, but they still sell things on the side, it would be underneath, they would fall underneath personal services?
I'm
I
sorry,
know,
I'm
I
not-
put a lot into that. So I noticed in the local, the print shop, local, that went in, that was removed and put into personal services.
Yes.
So then I thought, well, permanent makeup was like, it got now a new, like its own identification under personal services. But why, I mean, why wouldn't it go into personal services? I'm sorry, I said that
Yeah,
question
so
wrong.
permanent makeup is called out specifically because of the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation.
Okay.
They have separate regulations and other things that have to go through the state because it is similar to a tattoo shop.
Uh-huh.
So they have to go through a special criteria through the state. So we have it as its own separate use to call out for those
Okay.
reasons.
Okay. But then my next question is, or I sort of
Mhm.
convoluted that question. If you have a service, like any of these services are listed, if you sell things also in that shop, you know, you might, does that make it, I mean, if they, when they come, would they be then potentially considered retail.
So,
So how do you guys make
yeah.
that decision?
So whenever the way that kind of we apply zoning whenever you're moving a new use into a facility is we categorize it based on what you're doing in that space. And it is about what the biggest use of that space is really for the most part.
Okay.
So for instance, in a print shop, if you are like, I don't know if they still have them, but like a Kinko's where you would go in and you would send them PDFs, or you would go in and you could make copies in the print shop and you would walk out with your copies. You would pay for the printing and ink services. But they might also, on occasion, have printing supplies that are ancillary to that. Like, oh, you can also buy paper here to feed into the copy machine that you're about to print from. That is, we would still consider that a print shop. The fact that it falls under services rather than retail is because primarily that is a service rather than primarily being retail
So it gets-
sales.
It sort of gets back to bar versus, I mean, it's what the primary
Yes. Mhm.
services. Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes.
In the discussions with our direction from council on like vape shops and that kind of deal,
Mhm.
I'm curious, it doesn't look like in here, that there's any alterations related to like payday loans or anything like that. Was that a part of the discussion at council in terms of, altering other, uses that maybe some may deem undesirable as well?
No. Currently, the direction from council was to eliminate the possibility to be able to open any future tobacco or hookah sales places, whether there is smoking in there or not, which is why we can't just alter the code of ordinances, we're altering the code too. There was not any other discussion at that time. The rest of these changes are kind of city initiated based on what we've seen in the market and clarifying questions that we get from the public a lot.
Got it. Thanks.
So as Mary kind of preempted us, there is a new personal services use. This does combine local print shops, repair shops, small personal household good repair shops, and small engine repair shops. It combines salons, spas, that'll also include massage parlors, things like that, and barber shop. And then art studio as well as photography studios. And that is capped at 5,000 square feet in our BO and capped at 10,000 square feet in our B1, which is in alignment with what those separated uses were. Most of them, if they were allowed in those areas, they were capped at the lower sizes. So we went ahead and brought that over here to the personal services use. We did alter the broadcasting title and definition to include internet. So that is kind of a new technology thing where we get a lot of podcasts, a lot of internet broadcasting. So we altered that just to keep up with current trends. And then we went ahead and permitted glass and ceramic studios, as well as metalwork, or woodwork and furniture studios in B2. The issues or the caution before was that there are sometimes a lot of outdoor activities that happen with those. So the condition that was placed on that is that they do have to be 100% indoors if you are within that B2 area. If you have any outdoor components to your studio, then you'll have to go to our M1 district as you would have previously. So that's it for our services land uses. Any other questions? In our vehicle-related uses, we did have a auto repair and services minor. This is going to typically be oil change facilities that we see a lot of, particularly the Take 5 that came through fairly recently. So we did add pretty much every single condition that you saw on that permit. You also saw on some previous very similar oil change facilities, and we've just added them as standard CUP conditions for that use in our B2 area. So rather than, again, having to go through the longer process to get the same standard conditions several times over, we've front-loaded our code and just got it set to go right now. Similarly, we have standardized CUP conditions for car washes in our M1 district. Because that is our restricted industrial district. We do see a need for that to be kind of faster, more upfront, but we do still have the CUP requirement. We didn't touch that in our B2 area just because we don't want to see a kind of a glut of those. We don't want to see a little too much of that. And we also created a new land use for EV charging stations that we see a lot more of that coming with the current market and technology trends. So we have added it as its own line item with similar conditions to the fuel stations. That is in the code. We are not touching fuel stations though.
Laura, I think I missed what you said about you don't want more of, or you don't want to oversaturation.
Correct.
Can you just repeat that?
Yes, so we left the conditional use permit requirement in our B2 general business district because of the intensity of the uses of car washes and the fact that we just don't want an oversaturation of them in our B2 areas.
So by keeping it, or by going in this direction, we essentially preserve our ability to not, they can't develop by right.
Correct.
And
They have to
so-
go through the
So we
CUP
would
process.
treat each one as an individual. I don't know, just it catches my attention when you say, that the city makes that decision about what constitutes oversaturation, right? Maybe that happens in other places that I'm not thinking about, but, if, I'm not saying I want car washes on every corner, but who makes the call on when we reach saturation?
So that's you guys in city council. CUP permits will all have to come through before you guys in council. So that's going to be up to y'all whenever y'all decide, do we want a car wash here or not in the B2 area.
Okay, I mean, it gives us options, so that's good. And so I guess, we can cross the proverbial bridge when we get there, but, okay, thanks.
Okay. So then last but not least, our industrial category, we didn't touch too much in here. We did allow a brew pub by right in our B2 and M1 districts. That is going to be a microbrewery with food sales. And we did update the definition and notes to mirror our Lake Point redevelopment district that came before y'all last fall, just because that definition was more updated and current with the market trends. We also allowed the microbrewery without food sales just in our M1 area. We thought that was more appropriate in that location. And we updated that definition to align with the TABC licensing requirements. The name had changed for that.
I had a question on that. So that does not overlay with the bar alcohol? Because some of those brew pubs do kind of operate or function as that sometimes.
So that's going to be based on the license that they have. If they are licensed as a bar with TABC, they would be classified as a bar per our zoning district, and they would have to follow, be in the ABOP or in a PD that allows that. A brew pub and a microbrewery with or without food, there are two different licenses that are required from TABC to function as that. It's a specific license. So it's the brew pub license for with food sales. And the name is in here at the bottom somewhere for the without food sales category. But it is it's a specific name for that exact. Yes, so micro without food sales is, it's a brewer's license. So it's that BW versus the brew pub license. But either way, you have to have that specific license in order to open. It's very different from a bar, yes. Okay. We did change food and drink bottling from a conditional use permit to allowed by right. That's to help with Crown Bottling. It's one of our businesses in the business park. We just want to help eliminate a nonconformity and support that business retention. And then we allowed pharmaceuticals, packing or blending by right. That is to assist with the life sciences target that our economic development group is trying to acquire those, yes.
Laura, I'm curious, because that last point there talks about, obviously it speaks to economic development strategy, that targeting life sciences is a point of focus. That suggests that all of this went through economic development as well.
Yes.
So we would see if you guys wanted to go target, aerospace or whatever the next thing is, that would be reflected in here.
Correct.
Okay, cool.
Yes, so all of these, this chart was reviewed by our code enforcement group. Engineering and Public Works looked at it, as well as traffic, just to make sure there wouldn't be any issues with changing any of those uses there. And then also our Economic Development Group was specifically tagged, and we actually made some changes based on their feedback. So yeah, all of this was run by them. So that's it for the giant list of changes. So the next steps is we are continuing communication with the city. We do have a website that is now published dedicated to the ongoing project and includes details about this phase 1 with a link to the clean copy of what is proposed for the document. We are working on some social media targeted communication with our communications group. Next week, we do have the public hearing and consideration and action scheduled. Excuse me. That will also include eliminating tobacco sales and tobacco shops and stands from our PD ordinances. So it's a different SIC code number, so it reads a little bit different, but so that's going to be a separate action that's coming in the future. And then we do anticipate the city council public hearing to come hopefully in March. And again, we have some more development code phases coming soon over the next few months, year or two, targeting other sections of the code as we have time for them.
So this will this impact Lake Point too, the one that we just approved? I mean, 'cause-
No. So Lake Point is a special zoning district of its own it's the LPR district. These zoning districts that are in here are our standard zoning districts. So if the zoning district, so for instance, the Hill District is not covered by this.
Yeah, I
The
noticed.
MUC is not covered by this. This would be our BO, B1, B2, M1, M2, and the Brazos River district. And then the residential districts also for the residential.
Right,
tract,
right.
yeah.
But we would eventually then need to see all of the other PDs and work to take out the vaping and tobacco then,
So
correct?
vaping and tobacco is actually not allowed in Lake Point, so we don't have to worry about removing it from there. It is in none of the other standard districts. It's only in this chart, and it is in, like I said, quite 17 PDs,
Yeah.
and that's coming next week with the public hearing for
Okay.
this. You'll have the public hearing and the other item for that one also.
So will there be other changes in the PDs or only
No,
that
it is
specific?
just striking that one use.
Okay, thank you.
Just a simple ask, and if you think I'm crazy, feel free to say that, but if you could include a map next time in this that shows the districts with the color
Just the
correlation.
citywide zoning map?
Yeah,
Yes, we can do that.
that would be great, just gives it, otherwise you gotta go, and I've got 2 screens going, if you could do that, would be great, thank you.
I have one question going back to the residential part that I'd forgotten about. On the residential part, what is the portion of it that has to do with senior group homes in neighborhoods?
The community home.
Yes, where I guess if you have 4 rooms, then you can bring in four seniors to live in a group home.
Yes, so
How's that gonna change?
that is not going to change at all.
That's not gonna change?
No, sir, that's not being touched.
What about not just seniors, what about group homes?
Yeah, so
Or
that's-
rehabbed homes?
Yeah, that's all defined under the same term. It's called community home,
Okay,
and that is not there are no changes proposed to that.
no changes at all?
No, sir.
There's no distance requirement or anything changed on that? Okay.
So while we, in our city, we allow it in our districts, it is regulated by the state of Texas. So if there are separation requirements, that's going to be regulated by them.
So everything would fall under state or state laws
Yes, sir.
on how
It's,
many can be in each neighborhood and how close they're together?
That is under Chapter 123 of the Texas Human Resources Code.
What is that distance between group homes?
I do not know.
You don't know? Is there a number required in each subdivision that can be?
We can't touch those at all
You can't?
legally. Yeah, we don't get involved at all. Our legal department has told us to completely distance ourselves from those. We can't enforce them. We don't have any ability to say anything.
So
The-
it's,
yep.
so it's just.
From a zoning standpoint, let me be clear.
So it's just straight whatever the state says on it?
Yes,
Even though it says, single-family residents, they can bring in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so from a zoning standpoint, we have no ability to regulate at all from a zoning
What
standpoint,
about,
land use.
what about homeowners wanting to add like double the square footage of their house to bring in another 4 to 8 people in the neighborhood in a group home? What about that?
Are they licensed? It would depend on if they're being licensed with the state
So
or
it
not.
still goes through everything with the state?
If they're licensing themselves with the state, yes, it would be a group home,
Okay.
from our understanding. Yeah, yeah. We just don't have any ability to regulate from a land use or zoning standpoint. So we can't really add much more on that, yeah.
All right.
All right, any other questions? Going once, going twice?
Okay.
All right, Mary, you win the participation award for the evening. Let's move on to item 5, reports. I had the January 16th meeting and did not have anything to report. Commissioner Hallberg, I think you had February 6th?
Yeah, I sure did. There was nothing to report, but they did have one thing that I thought was pretty noteworthy. They had a donation to, I guess, the fire department for some monies for tracking technology for something called Project Lifesaving International. Now, I guess that money goes towards people that need tracking devices now are available in the city. So if you have family members or somebody you know that, has a tendency of wandering off, like there's now a tracking technology that you can get from the city. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Are children eligible?
I don't think it was for children.
Kidding. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Any city staff report?
Excuse me. As Laura mentioned, next week we have back-to-back meetings this month, so we'll see you next week on Thursday. Friday is the State of the City, I think, over here at the Marriott, Sugar Land Marriott, so I think all of you have RSVP'd. So we will see you there, but we'll also be sending out information on tickets and where to meet us and all that good stuff, start time and everything. So happy you all are going to join us. I think it's going to be great.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll take a motion to adjourn. Commissioner Brown, can I get a second just to be official? Commissioner Smith, we're adjourned. Thank you.